Again, I'm going to use the hole gouge, and I can see the line where my hole is. So what I usually do, drop this down a little. Now what often happens is I end up with the top of this being longer than I really want. And that's fine because that gives me some fudge room to adjust it as I turn this down a little bit more. And the bottom of this is going to end up somewhere probably about here. So all I want to do right now is just kind of do a gentle curve. Actually, I made this a little bit more, little sharper than I really intended to. I'm not going to take much material off here because as I hollow this, I want to keep as much mass here as I can until I get all this taken out up here. So I'm only going to take a little bit off, and the only thing I'm really trying to do is kind of establish sort of a rough idea for the curve. I don't want to take any more off than that. If I try to turn all this down and hollow it, the thing is just going to fly off. So I want to keep all this mass here as long as I can. The other thing I like to do is right where the hole is I'll put a little ridge there. So I've got a visual indicator where that hole is, and then that'll go away later. Now if you use this picture that I made, then you don't have to do that. I mean, you can do whatever design you want, then drill a hole. So the other thing is, since I was gathering away, I didn't really get the shape quite right. And so I'm going to work on that a little bit. I'm actually going to go back to this a little for a few minutes. And I'm going to use this is the round version of it. Try not to do what I just did. And just give me sort of a sense of the shape here. So I had the hole down farther from the top than I really wanted it. And again, that's kind of a good thing because that gives me all this room to work with. If I had the hole up too high, then I wouldn't have any place to go. So you always want to allow room to be able to make adjustments as you go. Okay, so I'm going to take all of this off, and I think I'll just go with this. Now the other thing that I like to do on these is you'll notice that most of these the piece comes up and then there's like a bevel on the top, and it's kind of a design element because I like to put these little caps on the top in contrast to the wood, so that gives it a place to sit. I mean, you don't have to do that. I mean, you can do this all out of one piece. You can make it whatever shape you want. So it really isn't that critical, but it's just something that works well for me. So I think I got a little carried away. one point I want to make is when you're using a parting tool, don't stick it in all at once. You always want to go in a little bit and leave air because these things can get caught. They're lightweight. There's not much mass. Actually, I'm controlling the longer handle. But if you try to part something off with just one shot, it could grab it. And all this is going to get drilled out. And when I started to hollow, started to cut down, I pulled the tool into the wood. So I just got a little careless. Okay, that's not too bad. I am not real happy with this shape, but we'll just live with it. I just used the Norton 3X paper and I cut it into strips and I back it up with, these are the Norton 3X sanding pads, it's the artificial sanding pad, and when they're not usable anymore I cut them into strips and use it as a backer so that I can keep it from getting too hot, and also gives me kind of a cushion there. Kind of smooth out the paper a little bit. I do a lot of sanding off the lathe, and particularly pieces like this afternoon when we do the split bowl one. There's also a couple of schools of thought on sanding speed. For a long time I was sanding at a lower speed, and I had discovered that it really didn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. When I do it a little bit faster, it seems to do just fine. I'm not going to do a lot of sanding because we don't have any kind of dust collection. That is something that also you should be very conscious of, is trying to keep the air in your shop as clean as possible. And you know, dust collectors are not going to get rid of the chips unless like it's going to suck it. And I used to do this with a Forstner bit, but I found it's a lot faster. Something's supposed to run. Actually, this could be going a little slower, but so I'm not going to go real deep here. This is taking too long. Getting a catch. I'm not worried too much about getting a catch. And when I'm hollowing, anytime you're hollowing on the, you want to have the tool at or above center a little bit. If it's below center, it's going to, if you get a catch, there's the tool, and if it's below center, you get a catch, it's going to pull right into the wood. So if it's above center and you start to get a catch, it'll just catch air. So the reason that people get a lot of catches in hollowing is because they get tool too low and the wood just grabs it. And you can't see what you're doing, and so it can be a real problem. So I think this is probably pretty good here. I I noticed people moved out of the way. So usually when I start to hollow, I just take very, very light cuts to begin with until I get a feel for how the wood's going to react. One of the things I like about the Easy Wood is that you can cut both directions. So you can engage the wood, keep it up against the wood, move it back and forth, and you're not putting a lot of, undue stress on the wood. The other thing, unless do we have air hose?
Yeah.
Okay, because I won't, this will fill up with chips. So as I get more comfortable with the feel, then I can start to go in be a little more aggressive with it. And of course you can get a gazillion different hollowing systems. I'm sure all of you know Don Derry, your neighbor sort of, and I expect most of you are familiar, or at least have seen his hollowing rig, which actually the lathe runs in reverse. I've never used it, but I guess it works pretty well. The Jameson system's been around forever. So, like I say, isn't this fun watching this? Now I am going to open up the opening a little bit more. I think that these tools come in handy. I'm just going to go a little bit more, and I can actually, once I get past the shoulder, I can get all the hollowing done and get some nice thin walls just with this. So the other tool that I want to show you really quickly here is this hollower that Easy Wood has developed, and I use this primarily just at the shoulder. The deal with this is you have to have the tool rest back far enough that the tool rest is going to be underneath this flat part. You can't have it here, it's going to flip around. It's kind of like the Sorby hollowers, the gooseneck ones. You got to be sure you're back far enough or it's just going to flip it. But when it's centered on that, the cutter is actually lined up with this, so you really don't get any torque, any twisting. And again, you want to stay slightly above center. But I'm not getting any torque at all. The tool is just, I don't have to have a death grip on it to get it to cut. Now, once you get past a certain point, since there's not a lot of metal here, you can't really go very deep anyway. But once you get past like the first inch and a half or so, then you can come back in with a straight tool and do the rest of it. They also make a bigger, heavier version of this that's kind of the same metal, the same sort of size as this. It's a much thicker and wider shaft, and this is bigger. It uses the same size cutter, but all this other stuff is bigger. But I can get up right up under the shoulder, and I can make that as thin as I want. And I'm not going to do any more.